Welcome. Let's see, how many of us are on? We have 19. Pretty close to our sign-up list. Welcome to another one of Road of Shalom's Day of Learning programs. Many of us worked together back in December at during a similar program, but not all of us. And so today we're going to continue or pick up on that, on what the session that we had, but hopefully provide an opportunity to expand on some of the thinking and hear what you've been thinking regarding meaningful retirement in the last several months. Rabbi Kuhn and I have intentionally talked about how to avoid making this too much of a repeat of the last session. And so we're going to spend a significant part of our time in breakout in three different groups. One group will meet with me, and those will be the ones of you who did not participate with us in the December group. And then the other two groups will be returnees. And so we'll be able to build on that. And then at the end, much as we did last time, we'll have an opportunity to debrief from the different groups, hear what some of the insights were, and also to do some more Q&A, time permitting. I want to thank in advance, I want to thank Scott Engel, who's volunteered to be one of our facilitators, our small group facilitators, and to Jerry Silverman, who is our tech angel. And anything that goes wrong, Jerry has accepted responsibility for in advance.
Don't thank me until 11:30.
Okay.
I mean, 12:30.
12:30 is even better. Is even better. So, Rabbi, how about if we start with a prayer for study?
Okay, let's join together for our blessing for study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu v'tivanu ba'asot divrei Torah. We praise you, eternal our God, sovereign of the universe, who has sanctified us by commandments and commanded us to engage in study in words of Torah. All right.
Okay. Again, I'm going to try not to be too repetitive from our December discussion, but what we're here to talk about is this stage of life that it seems like all of us are in or are approaching, called retirement. And the fact is that no two people will have the same experience in this next stage of life any more than we've had the same experiences in our previous stages of life. What we do understand, though, is that the importance, the likelihood of having a meaningful experience in this stage of life will depend significantly on the amount of planning that we do, that we invest in. That this is not as a simple, it'll just happen by itself. That is, having a meaningful experience won't. But we need to be clear about what it is that we are striving for, what it is that we're desiring, what we bring from our previous stages of life, and then trying to work on taking action in that regard. So I did hear someone in the background, so if you're not speaking, then please mute yourselves. That makes it easier for everyone else to understand. I think it goes without saying, we all know Rabbi Kuhn. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a member of the congregation for the last 10 or 12 years when my wife and I moved into Center City as part of our entering this stage of our lives. I'm a psychologist and have been working actively in redefining what my career looks like. And so I very much am living through this stage of life, much as Rabbi Kuhn is in terms of dealing with what it means to be an emeritus at Road of Sholem after a long, rich career working with all of us. We're going to talk about both the spiritual and Jewish foundation that we can bring to the challenges that we're facing, and briefly the psychological frame of reference as well. And then, as I said, we'll break into our small groups and do a deeper dive and more personal sharing. So, Rabbi, how about you leading us, both in terms of of spiritual and Jewish foundation to think about today?
Okay, thank you, Michael. I'd like to just tell everyone what a pleasure it is to work with Michael. He is a brilliant psychologist and a thinker, and really, someone who loves Judaism, and has been a great leader in the reform movement on the North American board of the URJ, the umbrella organization for all the congregations, reform congregations in America, and just a real treasure to have in our congregation. So thank you, Michael. And also, I'd like to add my words of thanks to Scott Engel, who's going to help us facilitate in a little bit, and Jerry Silverman, our tech guru. And Malka and Ellen, thank you for organizing this wonderful series of learning opportunities. I think that the way to look at retirement, it has got to involve a spiritual sense, a spiritual quest, really, because it is, no matter what anybody says, or no matter how much planning you've done or how sick of your job you were, it is a huge adjustment. You have to totally reorient who you are, and to redefine your role in every way, in the community, in the way you think about yourself. And you have to work out who you've been when you worked. And this goes for people who aren't retired and are just thinking about it, or planning and beginning to think about it. But you have to think about who you were, who you are now, and who you would like to become. So, I mean, those are very Jewish questions and involve a lot of serious thought and prayer and contemplation about who you are. It goes right to the heart of the Jewish idea of a meaningful life, of having a sacred purpose in your life. And so that's really what we're talking about today. I am fascinated by the timing of this, because in order to really think about retirement, you could possibly think of yourself as retreating into a cave, retreating into a quarantine. And we have just been through this experience, and we're still going through it, of the pandemic. And it's kind of fascinating to me to draw parallels between our experience during the pandemic and retirement, and thinking about who we are. and what our purpose is, because during the pandemic, especially if you're a little bit older and maybe more vulnerable, more susceptible to having serious complications if you got COVID, you had to be very careful. You had to really isolate yourself. And even if you went out, you had to wear you still have to wear a mask and stay separated from people. I mean, thinking about people who were not even able to come into contact with their friends or with their family. That we have had a very, very life-changing event by going through this. And I think one way to look at it is to ask ourselves, what was the cost, or what is the cost of isolation? And psychologists, and Michael can tell us this, that there is a huge psychological impact on our lives as a result of being isolated, and it is something that can contribute to physical disease as well as mental. It can cripple us and even kill. And there can be tragic consequences to loneliness. So I think it's important for us to think about what we've actually learned by going through this and apply it to our topic today of retirement. Think about the lack of contact. I have a good friend who just told me yesterday. He was joking around a bit, and he said, well, who needs synagogues? I mean, all we have to do is turn on the Zoom and we can watch the service, and everybody will be happy and live happily ever after. And then he said, I'm just kidding. What I really miss are the hugs. Okay, so think about that concept in your life, the missing being able to hug your children, your grandchildren, your friends, your brothers or sisters, your circle of friends. It's an incredible experience that we just went through. And so in order for us to really think about this in a serious way, I think we need to think about what those long-term relationships with others mean to us, and put that in the context of retirement. Are we going to retreat into a quarantine situation because we're retired? Or are we going to try to look outward and face others and not be isolated, but to be part of life? There's another interesting way to look at it, and that is the blessing of isolation, because in a way it gave us time to think about our lives, to reflect on who we are, to pray, to study, to find ourselves. And then what I'd like to propose is that the Jewish response to that is to get up and get out into the world and be a part of life, be involved in life to the extent that you can. And as more people are vaccinated and as we are able to kind of put down our guard, get back out there into life. And we have a couple of texts that I'd like to look at that show us this example. Two very famous characters in Jewish text. One, of course, Moses, our teacher, Moshe Rabbeinu. And think about the isolation that he was involved in when he went up Mount Sinai to get the Torah. Okay, so what did he do? God calls him to come up to receive the Torah, to take it back down, and to teach the people. And so if we can look at Exodus, Jerry's going to put on the screen Exodus chapter 24, verse 12. And let's look at the English and ask if anybody can see that, have put on your glasses or magnifying glass and see. And I'd like to ask for a volunteer to read verse 12. Thanks, Jerry. You're dealing with retirees here, Jerry. We can't see.
You click the font size, the big A.
Font size. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, if somebody can, oh, there you go.
There you go.
Somebody can see verse 12 through 18. If you could just read that, please.
There's an X on the left, Jerry. Just above that, yeah. I can read.
All right, go ahead.
The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and wait there, and I will give you the stone tablets with the teachings and commandments which I have inscribed to instruct them."
Yeah, go ahead through verse 18, please.
So Moses and his attendant Joshua arose, and Moses ascended the mountain of God. To the elders he had said, "Wait here for us until we return to you. You have Aaron and Hur with you. Let anyone who has a legal matter approach them." When Moses had ascended the mountain, the cloud covered the mountain. The presence of the Lord abode on Mount Sinai, and the cloud hid it for 6 days. On the seventh day, he called to Moses from the midst of the cloud. Now the presence of the Lord appeared in the sight of the Israelites as a consuming fire on the top of the mountain. Moses went inside the cloud and ascended the mountain, and Moses remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights.
Okay, thank you, Susan. So we can go back to gallery mode now. Jerry, we don't need to look at the commentary. I'm just going to sum up. The idea here is that Moses is alone for 40 days and 40 nights. And of course, we know what happens. The people lose faith in him and, so on and so forth. But the question for the purpose of this class is, what did Moses do during that 40 days and what did he think about? And actually, because he had to go back up again, and the Torah, believe it or not, shows that he goes up 3 times for 40 days. So that's 120 days. So he hasn't quite reached the level of isolation that we've reached for 14 months, but he did have a pretty good taste of isolation. The commentary and the midrash go crazy with this. What did Moses do during this time? And he talks to God and he argues with God, and they have these fascinating discussions all through the midrash and the Talmud and so forth. But the one that fascinates me the most was the great medieval Italian sage Sforno, who said that the 40 days affected Moses' spiritual progress, elevating him to a higher spiritual dimension. And the evidence was that at the end of this third 120 days, Moses's face radiated with so much spiritual illumination that the people were frightened, and Moses had to veil his face, had to wear an N95 mask. But the point is, the most important thing is that Moses had time to make spiritual progress. He elevated himself to higher spiritual dimensions, so much so that his whole aura was beaming. He had received so much inner knowledge and understanding of who he was as a person and what his role was, that he was able then to go back down the mountain and actually lead the people into almost to the promised land. And so the point is, Moses gets out of his isolation and moves back into the real world. Now, the second example I want to show you real quick is from Elijah, the story of Elijah in 1 Kings. Jerry, if you can show us that. Okay, thank you, Jerry. And it's chapter 19, verses 9 through 13. If somebody can see that and read that real quick from verse 9. A volunteer, just help yourself. Anybody. Unmute yourself, please, and read. No volunteers?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Okay, there he went into a cave, and there he spent the night. Then the word of the Lord came to him. He said to him, "Why are you here, Elijah?" He replied, "I am moved by my zeal for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to the sword. I alone am left, and they are out to take my life."
Jerry, can you scroll down a little bit, please? Thanks. Down through 13. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. Come out, he called, and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And lo, the Lord passed by. There was a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks by the power of the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a soft murmuring sound. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his mantle about his face and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then a voice addressed him, "Why are you here, Elijah?"
Okay. All right. This, I'm sure you've all heard of this story. It's translated here. It's the words in Hebrew, kol demama daka, was translated there as a soft murmuring voice, but a more famous translation from the JPS was a still small voice. So in other words, in this story, God wants to be seen by Elijah, and Elijah wants to see God. And so God makes this huge wind that blows everything down, and there's no God in there. And then there's an earthquake, and then there's fire. And the fourth thing is this still small voice. So there he is in this cave, and he finds God in the still small voice. What does that mean? Can somebody volunteer to give an opinion what that means?
I've always assumed that the still small voice is inside Elijah.
Inside Elijah and inside of us.
Sure.
So good. Thank you, Mark. So if we want to really find spiritual meaning like Moses and like Elijah, we have to look inside of ourselves. And this may be the most important point of this idea of how do we handle retirement. You can't just walk blindly into this and think, just see how it's going to go day to day. You have to really think about who you are and what the meaning of your life is and what you want to make of yourself. Not that you have to go out and, repeat the same thing you did during your work life, but what are you going to make of yourself, and who are you and who are you going to be, and how are you going to relate to the world? Both Moses and Elijah left that cave, left their quarantine, and went back to work and went back to life. And that, to me, is the message of this seminar. Okay, Michael,
Thank you, Rabbi.
welcome.
Yes, absolutely. I'm listening to you and just saying yes, 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 and seeing the absolute connection to, my personal thoughts, and the psychological perspective I take when I think about retirement. Um, it is definitely, as Rabbi suggested, an opportunity. And that opportunity has been magnified for all of us, often beyond the level that we would have desired during this pandemic months. Um, but I see, as a psychologist, I see retirement both as an ending and as a beginning. And it is this people who often suffer, and I use that word intentionally, through this stage of life, through retirement, are stuck at the first part. They're stuck at the ending part, and are feeling very isolated, and haven't had the opportunity or the good fortune to be able to envision what the future might be, what the new beginnings might be there for them. Um, Not coincidentally, I co-authored a book with a rabbi a number of years ago on clergy retirement. And the subtitle was Every Ending a New Beginning for Clergy, Their Families, and Congregants. And the point of that subtitle is that our retirements not only affect us, but they affect the people with whom we share our lives. And that makes it more complicated, but it also gives us a platform to make it an enriching experience. One of the pieces, one of the facts that I learned when doing research for that book that struck me the strongest was learning about the evolution of Social Security. Social Security was initially passed in 1935. And at that point, benefits would start at age 65. What do you think the average life expectancy was in 1935? Anyone?
63.
Anyone else? Close, but no cigar.
67.
How about 61.7? Significantly less than the 65, because which is why it was possible economically, for the government to do it, and why we're constantly in trouble today, because now those of us here in this program, God willing, depending upon our genetics, and if we don't get hit by the proverbial bus crossing the street, I mean, we can expect to live well into our 80s and 90s. And so that gives us this big period of time, more than this last, year and a half or so, where we've been in somewhat isolation. We have this opportunity ahead of us. And the challenge that we face is, what do we want to do with that? How can we make the most out of that? How can we make it as meaningful as possible? And that's really what the subtext of today's session and our discussions will really focus on. Some of you, in responding to our the questionnaire we sent out last week, talked about the importance of what would make retirement meaningful. Some of you talked about doing for others, being engaged in organizations, making the world a better place. What we talk about is tikkun olam, helping the synagogue. Others talked about, and these weren't necessarily mutually exclusive, self-enrichment, study, being part of learning new things, being part of cultural opportunities in our city. All of those are possibilities, and the thing is that there is no one right answer. There is no one wrong answer. But if it is what we do is to be meaningful, we need to be intentional about it. And I think that is the critical part. And many of us are very intentional in planning our retirements when it comes to the fiscal part of it. You know, can I afford this? What's it going to mean? How much money do I need to have before I can retire, before I can stop working? That's a reality, just as our health is a reality. But that's not enough. We can, I mean, and I dare say that all of us, each of us knows at least one or two people who have been financially very fortunate and yet are very unhappy people. And my contention is because they haven't found something that is more meaningful than the material aspects of life. So that's where we are today. We are here to think for ourselves, and then to hopefully, by hearing from each other, challenge ourselves to think about new ways of dealing with this next opportunity that faces us. Jerry, I think this would be a good time to break us up into groups. As I said, one group meeting with me is intended to be people who were not part of our last session in December. And the other two groups, one with Rabbi and one with Scott, will be returners. And we all have questions to stimulate discussion. We'll spend about a half hour and then we'll come back together. Rabbi,
Okay.
anything else I forgot?
Okay, first of all, I have to apologize to Michael. He sent me an email asking what the link was to his own session, but I was too busy blabbing with the rabbi earlier. So
That's all right. No
as far as who's in which group, I already assigned everybody, but there might be some people in the returning who are actually newbies. So the only newbies I have here are Debbie, Jeffrey, Mark, and Nancy Halpert. Is anybody else here for the first time? Julia is a first timer.
Yes, Terry and Merrill Silver are both first timers.
Wait. Let me write them down because I have to. Well, wait. I can move you out as a place. So, Julia, I'm moving you to session 1.
Welcome.
It's high tech. Who else? Raise your
Hi,
hand.
I'm Mark.
Ilana is going to room 1. Raise your hand if it's easier for me to see your hands. Marilyn
Terry Silver.
Vogel is going to room 1. Raise your hand. Anybody else?
Merrill Silver.
Merrill Silver. I'm moving you to room 1. Anybody else's hands up?
Chip.
Chip Ellis.
Pip is going to room 1. Anybody else? Door number 1, door number 2. Anybody else? Okay, I think that I'm going to press the breakout button, open all rooms, and you said half an hour?
Yes, please bring us back in a
Okay,
half.
so around 12:05, 12:10, I'll send you a message. that we're
Perfect.
Wrapping up. Okay, have fun, everybody.
Thanks, Jerry.
Looks like the same group.
We're the only ones back.
We're the only ones who followed the rules. Jeez, why am I not surprised? Well, Mark, while we're waiting, Mark, you look like you were going to say something a little while ago, and I
Oh,
didn't.
well, I need to reveal that Debbie and I are spouses, and so often have similar reactions to things.
Okay.
We're both laughing about the envelope stuffing thing because we had that conversation a number of times.
Yeah.
And the same perspective. I was, during my work life, I was president of 4 different volunteer boards for periods of time, experiences which I did not enjoy as much as I might have hoped. I would. So I was looking forward to stuffing envelopes too. Of course, that's not what.
So have you found envelopes to stuff?
Not so much. Between being a leader and being an envelope stuffer.
Okay.
What I'm doing.
You want to stuff some of my bills?
I would imagine once we get beyond this pandemic, I would imagine there might be some similar kind of work for you to do at Rhoda Sholem, but we'll see. Rabbi, do you want to
Hi.
get it started?
No, well, we had a really nice discussion. Sorry, I was muted. What are we doing? How do you want to handle this, Michael? You're muted now.
Wait a minute.
There you go.
All right. And we can each unmute. Thank you. I'm sorry. Let's go group by group and just talk about some highlights, about some takeaways from the discussion we had. You want to start, Rabbi?
Okay, thanks. Well, yeah, we had a very nice discussion. I think some have not retired yet, but they're thinking about it, and I think they found this to be a meaningful discussion. But those who have, it kind of fell into a couple different groups. One calls him or herself a planner, and really had just kind of shot out of the out of retirement and went right to putting a lot of energy into volunteer activities and really staying busy. Another just kind of found different ways to spend time and was so busy during their career that devoted herself to wanting to take care of her family and to get to know her grandchildren better than she got to know her children, because she was so busy in her career. So, but each one has thought about what they want to do in their retirement, and have really planned and given some spiritual thought to it as well. Someone called retirement a new exploration, which I think is a great word. Just trying to really think about what's important to explore, what's available out there beyond your work life. And to some people were talking about, the pandemic, about how they lost contact with friends, and some of their friends didn't want to even do Zoom. But then others were saying that Zoom's been a great way to connect with long lost friends around the country, and to set a regular time each week to talk to a group of friends or some family members. So I thought those were all really interesting. And plus, there's a lot of interest in putting together a connection group following this session.
Good. So Scott, tell us a little bit about highlights of your group, and then after I'll share mine, then we'll talk about the connection group.
Okay, great. I would say that my group jumped into this extremely well. Um, Somebody said that they'd had the flexibility to choose big, and they did go big in terms of their post-career. They'd had a high-intensity career, and they jumped straight into it. We talked about now being the gravy time in life, and it really is. But clearly, these folks are doing that which I guess fits into Jewish thought, and that is to do something bigger and grander, not only for themselves, but for others. And the three that I was with, clearly have taken leadership roles at Road of Shalom, made it a better synagogue, made the community better, and they're all adding value to the lives of a lot of people. So that was really an exciting thing for me to hear, because I, on the other hand, it's been a struggle. I said 4 years into this, I'm finally getting used to it. And that was even with some thoughtful preparation. We all come to the table with something a little bit different. But it was a very, very thoughtful conversation. I'm sure that there's interest in having these meetings ongoing as well.
Great. And the group that I met with, have similar experiences to the rest of you, although none of them were in our first meeting of this program. Many of them are already retired and have had different experiences. And the focus that I emphasized and then the group picked up on was the notion of intentionality, of being planful, making some decisions, and about how you want to use your time. And we had an interesting yin and yang kind of comments from Debbie and Nancy in terms of what they were looking for once they retired, when they were looking for something else in their life. One was looking for something that was meaningful, impactful for the organization, and the other was looking for something that was just she wanted to help and not be heavily burdened by the organizational demands of the organization. And the answer is, as I hope is evident to all of you, is there is no one right answer. We need to be thoughtful about what it is that we can give and what is it that we desire to receive in return. After our last session, Scott had suggested that maybe the congregation would want to form a new connection group. And some of you, the fact that so many of you have come back to this same session in today's day of learning suggests to me that there might be some interest in that. So Scott, let me turn it over to you and see how you want to move forward with this.
Well, I think that the desire is there, the interest is there, and I guess it's just a matter of calculating that interest again to see if it still is there. I think that these are very healthy discussions. Not only, there's sharing of ideas, but then there's the idea of putting it into action. So sometimes we're doing things to better ourselves, better our community, better the world. But sometimes there are maybe activities, right, where we're just kind of move on from there, where there is strong connection feeling. So for example, in my group, Ellen and I were talking about the idea, we're very big hikers and walkers. We go to Valley Green a couple times a week. So, the idea to find segments beyond, growing ourselves and Tikkun Olam. And by the way, there is a group at Valley Green called Friends of the Wissahickon, and they have Thursday trail maintenance. So, that's something I've participated in. So I guess the opportunity certainly exists for people to jump on this.
What would people do if they want to follow up on this? Should they contact you? is there something going to go out from the synagogue, or am I premature?
I'd say it's not that it's premature. A discussion had been started, but hadn't been continued. So I guess it's good timing for the discussion to continue.
Okay.
Well, I think, I obviously cleared this with Rabbi Maderer before proposing this, but she was very excited about it. And she said that they have staff capability in the office to organize these connection groups, because there are a bunch of them. And I just think it's a wonderful idea, because that's what Road of Sholom's all about, is creating profound connections. And here we have a group of 20 some odd people who, and I'm sure there are more out there, who might want to just talk with each other about what retirement means, or to take hikes together, to go on a historical tour with Jerry, or something like that. I mean, there are all kinds of things that people could do together to get us out of our cave.
Okay.
Why did you call us odd people, Rabbi? The 20 odd people.
I was talking about myself.
So I could use I'm just trying to imagine what the activity would be of this group, or the purpose. And at Rabbi, you just were giving a little more shape. So it sounds like it could be a place where people talk about the Jewish and the secular implications of being retired. Could also give each other resources about, here's a great hike. Both Ellen and Scott were saying that. And also you're saying undertake activity together, just to have sort of an age cohort of people who are similarly flexible in their time. So
And their knees.
and what? And their knees have the similar knees. So does that sound what you all had in mind?
Sure. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, and resources, not just for things to do, but there's wonderful things written about retirement, as Michael was bringing up, and so maybe we'd be interested in reading or watching people talk about retirement to bring to the table to talk about.
I could also imagine if one of us is volunteering in some organization where there's some need for more volunteers, making people aware of the opportunities that are in the greater Philadelphia area. Again, that would be suitable for people who have more flexibility in their schedules than we may have had when we were working more full-time.
I was the co-chair of a connection group of Merkaz Limud kids in, I forget, 10th grade and up or whatever it was. But so having somebody organizing like what we do or when we get together or whatever is not something I want to do because I'm still working and I'm too busy. But that seems like something, if we're going to create a connection group, I think that sort of somebody is needed. And all these ideas sound marvelous. And I'd also like to throw in, maybe we even get you, Michael, to kind of, give us little workshops occasionally or something.
I'm happy to contribute, but I'm sure there are other people who have equally interesting and more interesting things to contribute as well. That's one of the things that I think might be intriguing about a group of, quote, retirees, and that is all of the different experiences that we've had in our lives, not just in our work, but our life journey that we could share with each other. I think there are probably many fascinating stories to share, over a cup of tea or a glass of wine or, whatever. I think that would be something that I would find intriguing too.
Right.
All right. Rabbi, anything else to close, or should we?
No, I think it's been a very nice session, very good session, and I've learned a lot just listening to you guys, and I hope you feel the same way.
Gail, is there an evaluation form that goes out to people that you want response to?
Yes, I believe that everybody will receive an email with the evaluation form for this session. And we do hope that you'll fill it out and give us ideas, not only for how engaging this was and anything that might pertain to this one, but any other ideas for other sessions, for days of learning, for people who could lead such sessions. We'd love to have it.
And then I would add that, you know, if you have thoughts about this retirees connection group, that you share them with Scott as a way of just being a repository for that kind of information to try to help move that idea forward.
Thank you all for sharing all that you shared in our groups and stuff.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Thank you.
Well,
All right.
thank you, Rabbi, and Scott.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Scott.
Jerry.
Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
See ya.
See you later.